Today, let's get into the subject that is, you know, one of the constants of life. I think we've all heard about this saying that talks of there are two constants in life: death and change, you know? So let's talk about change rather than death, right? Who wants to talk about death so early in the morning on a bright new day? Let's talk about change. Change is inevitable. Hence, it's a constant. There's nothing we can do about it. The question that arises, though, is what do you do? Because there are different types of change, first and foremost. So that's what I'll talk about, the different types of change, but with a focus on one particular one. But also, over and above that, I'd like to touch on change and how you can adapt to change, but how you can also lead the change. So the first type of change I want to talk about is change that relates to accumulative change. So change that happens over time, and sometimes that type of change is dangerous in the sense that we don't even notice some of the fluidity that happens as life transpires and as time goes by. So we go into a particular habit, right? And then as we get into that habit, there are certain things that speak to the consequences of that habit that we may not have foreseen, So you get into the habit of stopping to exercise, for example. Over time, the consequences will show only over an elongated amount of time, or an elongated period of time, versus if you were to continue exercising with that goal of, I want to see a change that is, positive. So there's the positive and negative side. The positive side would be that you'd exercise with a goal in mind of having lost so much weight, having maintained so much body fat, having retained so much water in the body, having increased the level of energy that is in your body, those type of things. Those are positive things that speak to habits that build change, positive change. But negative change will be the contrary, where now the opposite effects of not exercising constantly would take place, right? And then there's the second type of change, which is disruptive change. So disruptive change is a type of change that comes about as a result of a particular circumstance or a particular situation. And that type of change is good as well. In fact, I think it's very good, depending on the perspective and what actually causes the change. I'd say it plays more in the realm of it being good, because disruptive change disrupts usually the negative things that are in our lives. So it could be partnerships, could be friendships, could be relationships, it could be a lack of focus, but there's this particular thing that sparks, or what's the term? It triggers. There's a particular thing that triggers that particular change in you, and immediately there's nothing you can do except act upon it. So you can't ignore it. You literally have to act upon it. And that's what disruptive change is all about, right? But how does one adapt to disruptive change? Because it's the one I favor above, just the gradual change. Because disruptive change, it disrupts your train of thought to the extent that you get to think quicker. You get to analyze the situation that caused you to change in the first place. And you actually get to take action, quick action, forced action. That's what disruptive change does. And in business, change is quite familiar, because in business, you'll find that all the types of businesses that come out with a disruptive nature and innovative ability, or the ability to come up with initiatives that change the business landscape, those are called disruptions in a particular sector or industry. And that's why disruptive change is good, because it brings about a particular way of looking at things. It brings about a particular swift change in how society operates. Look at, your big tech companies, your Google, look at your Apple, look at, they came up with ways to disrupt the markets. And that's why the technological space is where it is today, because of that change that they brought about. And people either had to adapt or they had to fall off. Look at BlackBerry, you look at, Samsungs that have to basically iterate what other businesses are doing. You look at a multitude of businesses, and then you'll see that change is good from a disruptive point of view. But of course, there's also change that speaks to an emotional type of disruptive change, and sometimes that can go in the contrasting direction. But of course, it depends on you and how you actually view it. As I always emphasize, everything depends on how you view it. So sometimes you can have a fallout with a friend, you can have a fallout with a business partner, you can have a fallout with a loved one in your personal, intimate relationship, you can have a fallout with a family member. And when that happens, you sit and you analyze, and in your analytical space, you get to discover, well, what are some of the things that led to this particular change? So it's a combination of disruptive but also accumulative, because in your assessment, you get to actually assess some of the things and you evaluate some of the changes that were happening gradually till that trigger of disruption happened. Now, in a situation where the change needs to happen and is forced, then you as an individual, you getting into that peculiar position where you find out how overwhelming change can be, right? Change is overwhelming, guys. I talked about the fact that it's good. I talked about that fact that it can be gradual or disruptive. I talked about what it is. But let's talk about now the stage where you would get to and you face the circumstance of it being overwhelming. Change is overwhelming because, for one, change is usually new. And anything that is new, we fear because we have a fear of the unknown, right? So change is overwhelming. Change, number two, needs to be accepted. You need to accept that it's a constant of life, and it will come whether you are prepared for it or whether you want it or not. But the best thing is for you to be prepared, of course, And also, change is necessary. So when it comes, as overwhelming as it is, as challenging as it may seem at the time, take it in your stride. Accept it. Follow your heart in that particular point in time while analyzing all the circumstances around you. It will lead you into a positive space that will then take you to, to pivot. It will take you to pivot, to get to the next level. That's why it's there. That's why it happens. And that's why it's necessary. So change, I welcome you. Change, I know my listeners welcome you. Change, we aren't afraid of you. Change, we want to be your friend. So we want to adapt to you, but we also want to lead you. Adapt to you earlier on, but we want to lead you. So change, we aren't afraid of you. We're willing to walk the journey with you. Because think about it. You started off not being able to even sit on your butt. Then you started crawling. Then you started walking. Then you started running, and you never stopped. Now, it may not be you running physically, but your mind is running. Your dreams are running. Your drive is running. And that's all has been a transition, a change throughout your entire throughout your entire lifetime, and it's going to continue happening. So whatever negative situation, whatever bad situation you may feel you are in right now, believe me, ladies and gentlemen, change will come. Change will come. Just be ready for it. Prepare for it. Read upon it, be focused in relation to it, and just work on it. Work on it and work on it. Peace out, guys. But if there's one thing that I don't want to change, I don't want you guys to stop listening to my videos. Cheers.